Have you ever wondered what happens at the exact moment we die? Biology tells us that the first two things that happen are the end of breathing and the cessation of heartbeat, followed by brain death, the beginning of decomposition, and other processes that gradually transform a person into remains that will never again display that special smile that meant so much to us. But that's what occurs on the outside. Internally, from the perspective of the person nearing death, the story is completely different. Of course, we cannot know what happened to a person who has lost their life, but what about those who almost lost their lives? Well, this opens a window to many astonishing stories and accounts. From people who claim to have seen bright lights and their body projecting outward, to those who say they have seen deceased relatives, these experiences have always intrigued science and the curiosity of anyone since ancient times. In today's video, you will discover 5 near-death experience stories you will never forget. Colton Burpo. Colton Burpo, a 4-year-old boy, had a near-death experience that captured the world's attention. During an emergency appendectomy, Colton says he visited heaven. There, he described seeing angels and Jesus Christ, who had nail marks in his hands and rode a colorful horse, alongside animals unknown on Earth. Astonishingly, Colton claimed to have met his sister, whom his mother had lost before his birth, and his great-grandfather, who died 30 years before his birth, both recognized by him from never-before-seen photos. According to Colton, heaven was luminous, and the people there had a physical form but were younger and more joyful. This story is narrated in the book Heaven is for Real, which later became a film, inspiring many with its message of hope and love, despite discussions and skepticism about the authenticity of this near-death experience. Alexander Eben. Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon with years of experience, had a near-death experience that completely transformed his view of life and death. In 2008, Alexander fell into a coma due to a rare bacterial brain infection. During this period, he experienced an extraordinary journey that he detailed in his book, Proof of Heaven. Alexander reports being taken to a place he called Core, a space filled with light and unconditional love, where he met a spiritual guide. There, he received profound messages about the interconnection of all souls and the infinite purpose of life. What makes his experience particularly intriguing is that, according to him, it occurred while his cerebral cortex was inactive, challenging conventional medical explanations that attribute these experiences to brain phenomena. After fully recovering, something considered miraculous by doctors, Alexander began to study and speak about the relationship between science and spirituality, arguing that his experience provides evidence that consciousness survives the death of the physical body and that there exists a broader and more loving spiritual realm beyond our physical reality. Do you believe in this too? Let us know in the comments. Pam Reynolds. The case of Pam Reynolds is one of the most cited and examined in near-death experiences. In 1991, Reynolds, a singer-songwriter from Atlanta, underwent a risky operation to remove a large brain aneurysm that threatened her life. The procedure, known as induced cardiac arrest, involved cooling her body, draining the blood from her head, and stopping her heart and brain functions, putting her in a state of clinical death. During this time, Reynolds reported leaving her body. She said she saw herself floating above the operating table, observing and listening to the doctors working on her. Interestingly, she described specific details about the surgical instruments used, the comments made by the doctors during the operation, and even the music playing in the background. All this despite being clinically dead. After leaving the operating room, Reynolds reported going through a tunnel and finding a bright light, where beings of light, including deceased relatives and spiritual figures, were. She described an indescribable sense of peace. Pam was informed by one of these figures that it was not her time to die and that she needed to return. Surprisingly, after the operation, Pam woke up and was able to recover completely, a result that defied the odds given the complexity and risk of the procedure. By reporting everything that happened, she shocked everyone, as everything she said she saw while in surgery actually occurred. Howard Storm. Howard Storm, a former atheist and art professor, had a profound near-death experience that radically changed his life. At 38 years old, during an art trip in Europe, Storm suddenly suffered a perforation in the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, an essential organ in the digestive system. This medical condition was severe and required immediate attention. However, due to a series of delays at the French hospital where he was being treated, his condition rapidly worsened, leading Howard to nearly lose his life. At that critical moment, Storm had an extremely real near-death experience. He initially saw himself being dragged into darkness by voices that seemed friendly but quickly became aggressive. Fighting against pain and terror, he realized his situation was hopeless, and not knowing what else to do, began to pray, something he hadn't done in many years. That's when the experience completely changed. After his prayers, he was rescued by beings of light, who took him to a place of unimaginable beauty and peace. There, he had an encounter with Jesus Christ, who talked to him about love, the true essence of life, and the importance of following a spiritual path. Storm was informed that he needed to return to his life on Earth to share his experience and the lessons learned with others. The physical recovery of Storm after all this was remarkably quick, considering the severity of his medical condition. Transformed by his experience, he abandoned his previous career and eventually became a pastor, dedicating his life to sharing his story and messages of hope, love, and redemption. Have you ever had an experience like this? Let us know in the comments. Ian McCormack. Ian McCormack had a remarkable near-death experience after being stung by a deadly jellyfish while diving in Mauritius, located in the Indian Ocean, east of Madagascar. On the night of the incident, he began to feel the paralyzing effects of the venom and knew his life was in danger. Rushed to a hospital, he quickly began to lose consciousness. Ian initially described finding himself in a place of complete darkness, where he felt profound loneliness and despair. Then, just like in the previous case, he began to pray, as he did in his childhood. After his prayers, he reports being taken to a very strong presence of light, which he identified as God. He described finding himself in a heavenly environment where he felt incredible peace in his body. There, he had the revelation that life continues beyond physical death and that love is the most important thing in our lives. He was invited to stay in that wonderful place, but he chose to return to life to share everything he had experienced and inspire more people to see God. So what do you think of these incredible stories? Do they make you see life and death differently? Maybe you firmly believe in near-death experiences, or perhaps you still have your doubts, and that's okay. What's important is the curiosity these stories spark in us. So I invite you to reflect. How do these experiences impact your view of what comes after this life? Do you think there's something more waiting for us, or do you believe these are just reactions of our brain in critical moments? Share your opinions, experiences, or even your doubts in the comments below. Let's build together an open dialogue space where all perspectives are welcome. If you know someone who would have something to say about this topic, share this video with them. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more explorations of the mysteries of life, death, and everything beyond our current understanding.